What's going on, YouTube? My name is Mr. Crippled, and today I'm going to be giving you my first impressions guide on the new god Mordred in Smite 2. Now, before we get into the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you'd like to keep up with any other content that I might be putting out, I will be leaving a link to my Discord in the description below. Now, what Mordred is he is a auto hybrid where he has an emphasis on not only his auto attacks but also on his abilities. And he scales heavily with strength as well as having some minor bits into intelligence, and we'll go over how that plays into his kit later in the video. First impressions right off the bat, he is going to remind a lot of OG players of King Arthur, like a King Arthur LITE, and he shares a couple similarities with him, which again we'll go over here in a moment. He seems pretty easy to pick up but difficult to master depending on how his kit works. And I will be going ahead and teaching you all I know about this character right now. So, what makes a character is how their passive works, and Mordred is no different. Now, his passive is known as Wrath of the Forsaken, where as you hit enemies, you will gain Wrath, and your Wrath actually directly ties in to how your ultimate works. Now, your Wrath doesn't really give you any other stat bonuses other than giving you access to two different types of ults, which we will go over here in a moment. However, the most important thing to note about his passive is that after using an attack or an ability, your interact key for you console players, that's going to be your R3 button. For your PC players, I don't know. I'm not about that life. But you do get a dash after casting an ability, and this ability does do damage, and it knocks back the first enemy hit. So it is a little bit of a skill shot. So if you look at the bottom left, right next to the character portrait, you can see this little, these two arrows that will light up as I'm making attacks, as you can see. And then if you press the interaction button during the skill, you can see I do a little quick dash forward. This is Mordred's only movement ability. So it's not really meant to be used as an escape. This does feel like a very all-in character if you go in on somebody who wants to try to full commit to that. You can do some cheeky stuff, like if you can quickly turn your camera around, go one quick auto, and then do a dash. And then possibly use your entire ultimate bar to get out. But that's not really safe, and, you know, it's kind of a waste of his kit. So, you do that as you will. And just to showcase what that looks like. Or, I can't do it here because training mode kind of sucks. But if you look like this, as you can see, it does that little bit of damage. It doesn't work on the minions, unfortunately. It doesn't work on the minions, unfortunately, but I'll be able to showcase a little clip of the video of how it works here in a moment. Okay, so now let's go over his abilities. Now, his abilities are very unique, and I do like the direction that they're taking with his abilities. In order of importance, I'm going to save his ultimate and his 1 for last, because I feel like it's a lot simpler to go over just his 2 and his 3 first. Now, his 2 is very straightforward. All it is a scream that does damage. It increases your movement speed and it increases your attack speed. And the cool thing about this is that when you hit autos, you will reduce their physical protections for each auto and increase the amount of protections that you gain per auto. So if you know, again, if you're OG, you're going to recognize that as he has stone cutting as a passive, which is pretty massive for a character that's very all-in, so he can reduce your protections. And since he's meant to be played as a tank or a solo laner where it's kind of meant to be kind of damaged but mostly tanky, that passive alone is going to be make it very difficult to deal with him in the early laning phases. And very hard to build against him since he can just reduce your protections every time he hits you. But that's basically it. It's just a giant stim. It does do a pretty healthy amount of damage, dealing 255 base and then an additional 50% of your strength stat and an additional 40% of your intelligence stat as physical damage. As you can see here, it does get a pretty decent amount of scaling to intelligence, but most of his other abilities only really scale with strength, so we're not going to be trying to level that. Next is his 3. Now, his 3 is a skill shot. Is this little move here. His 3 is very cool in the fact that it doesn't do a lot of damage initially, but what it doesn't do in damage, it makes up for utility. What it does is that it's not only slows enemies and does 175 base damage, but the target will bleed, and every time they move, they take 49 damage plus an additional 5 to 10% of your strength as bonus damage as they move. So you'll see a lot of times when you're playing Smite where people are going to be dipping and dodging. They're going to be trying to juke you as best as they can, rotating their cameras. And this kind of puts a stop to that in a way to where as they're running away, they're going to be constantly taking damage. And if I'm not mistaken, let me see. Bluestone is in the game. So not only will be if you build Bluestone, not only will you be taking that tick damage from his 3, but you're also going to be taking the Bluestone damage, which will rack up the damage fairly substantially. So his 3 is very interesting. However, as you can see, it is fairly slow, and it's very easy to dodge if you're anticipating it. If you're up close, obviously, it's going to be a lot easier to hit this ability. And since you're all in anyway, you're more than likely going to be, you know, throwing your auto, dashing in, and then throwing your 3 behind it so you can make the skill shot a little bit easier. Kind of think of like the Vulcan 3 from Smite 1, and then trying to hit the 3 into the 1. So there's a lot of combo potential with his 3. Now, before we get into the super hard ability, I'm going to go ahead and go over his ultimate. Now, he does have 2. And like I stated before in the video, it's very dependent on how many stacks of your ultimate that he has. Give me 1 second. Okay, so if you look above my health bar, or if you look above my character portrait, you're gonna notice this little vial that fills up as I do damage. And if you look at your 4, it is 2 blades. Now those 2 blades basically indicate that's your baby ult, and you need 40 stacks. Now it's really easy to tell. You don't really need to see how many stacks you have. Once you get to that first tick, you will now have your ultimate. Now, the first ultimate is still pretty good. Again, it's really similar to King Arthur's. However, instead of a stun, you get a root and a health shield along with healing over time. What that looks like is this. So, it's pretty cool. I believe you can still cancel the channeling on it. That way, you know, you're not a sitting duck if you're trying to use it to close gaps, or use it to hold somebody still as you're trying to make a hasty retreat. But again, this character is very all in, so the likelihood that you're going to be using it as a retreat rather than an engage is very low, but it is an option that you have with this ultimate. Makes it to where laning against him in solo lane is going to be really difficult because the cooldown on it is very, very low. I think with max CDR, you got a 15-second. It's 15 seconds, so you can use it to engage, get a big heal over time, pop your 2, and then just start running in because now you have the health shield and the healing over time to kind of satiate you. Now, the next one, the cool one that everybody loves, only comes when you have at least 80 of your stacks. And how you know you're at 80 is that the symbol for your ultimate will change. And if you're not trying to look at the symbol for your ultimate, if you look over at the gauge, it'll actually be 2 notches up. So let me go ahead and build that up for you. Alright. So now, the big boy ult is very interesting. It's very cool. Before I show you what it looks like, I'm going to explain to you what it does. So first, Mordred enters this CC immune dash, and the dash goes pretty far. And on the first god hit or series of gods hit, if they're standing pretty close together, they will be stunned, they will be knocked into the air, take 164 physical damage, and then falling damage from a little slam attack. And the whole thing is pretty huge, especially for an ultimate, because if you've been playing the game for a while, you'll realize that knockups are the best form of CC in the game. Because if you don't pre-beads the knockup, you have to eat the entirety of the knockup, which is pretty scary. And him just having access to not only a root, which could burn beads, and then having access to a big ult at the end is kind of insane. So here's what the ultimate looks like. And I'll go ahead and stand pretty far back so you understand how far it can actually reach. Yeah, his ultimate is pretty interesting. And the cool part about this is, utility-wise, is that you get 3 stacks of your passive. So you don't just need to build up 80 Wrath, you can build up to 120. So realistically speaking, you could possibly big boy ult into a group, burn any pre-beads, and then when you land, you can potentially ult again into the minor ult and get a root. So he has very, very amazing engage potential. The problem is that if he engages, he needs to be sure that he has teammates to follow up. So ultimate, in all honesty, solid 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10 ultimate, very amazing. Now, the most complicated one is his 1. Now, his 1 and what it does changes depending on whether or not you've autoed and where in your auto string you're at. So if you look down next to the portrait on his 1, you'll see that it's glowing purple. To make it really simple to understand, if it's glowing purple, that's the sustain version, because he will do 2 attacks, a swipe and then a slam down. The slam down will do healing based off of your will be based off your protections. So the higher your protections are, the bigger the heal you're going to get from the 1 if you use it while it's purple. Now, if you watch, as I'm autoing, you see that it changes yellow. This move, when it's like that, the slam will instead do bonus damage depending on the amount of protections you have. I can't really discern whether it means off of the protections that you have, or if it's based off of how many protections they have, or maybe it's protection reduction. But for first glance, it looks like it's going to be based off your protections. So this character is going to get a lot of benefit from building really tanky. So just to give you a visual look, there's the regular version. And then let me go ahead and reduce my cooldowns. And then here's the regular version. Okay, my fault. I actually got it mixed up. The red one... Death follows close. The red one is the heal. The purple one is the protection spread. Yeah, so the second... So base, it just does damage based off your protections. And then if you auto and then do it, it gives you the heal. So either way, still pretty substantial. If you're going to be laning with this character, you're going to have to really be paying attention to what you need at the moment. Do you need the damage? Do you need the heal to help you sustain? Pairing the sustain off the 1 with the baby ult with Mordred is going to be really important. So that's a quick overview for his abilities. Now, the most important part to make this character viable is knowing which ability to level first. Now, I'm going to go ahead and tell you this now. You're not going to be leveling the 2 first. It does do a pretty insane amount of damage, but it really doesn't give you any extra attack speed or movement speed, or reduces their protections anymore if you level it. So it's probably better just to leave it as is and just get it at level 3 or get it at level 2, depending on what ability you want to get first, and then just leave it alone. After that, it's kind of up to you. Now, in most cases, you're more than likely going to be leveling your 1 just because of the gigantic amount of healing you can get for it. But the only problem with that is possibly it's clear. Because the 3 does go through lane minions, and having the extra tick damage with bleed along with the bluestone can really change a fight up. So if you're confident in always hitting the 3, and in certain matchups where they're kind of running away from you and not really trying to box you, leveling the 3 could be really beneficial. But in most cases, you're more than likely going to be leveling the 1. After that, you're going to level 3, level the ultimate as you go along, and then level your 2 last. Now, the last thing I want to talk about with Mordred is potential builds and his roles. Now, because of how his abilities scale and how he wants to be played, it really only makes sense for him to be a solo laner, especially with the showcase. They kind of nailed it right on the head with his showcase promotional video where he's fighting Bologna. He is going to be a solo laner. You can possibly flex him in the jungle just to get a lot of big damage off, but it's kind of the same vein as trying to do it with King Arthur. You're not going to get a lot of potential from it, and his value comes from how long he can stay in team fights. But I do think he's meant to have some damaging items along with being tanky because of how his kit works. I don't think you're going to get a lot of benefit from him just being a tank. I do think you're going to need some damaging items, Quinn size, maybe a cooldown item here and there to make sure he really puts on the pressure for the backline because he is meant to dive. But when it comes down to his build, my only problem with hybrid characters, especially with a character like Mordred, is where you want to build into him. Yeah, it's very obvious you want a little bit of attack speed, but you don't want to only focus on attack speed because then you'll lose the value of how hard his abilities hit. So I think maybe one attack speed item, maybe Berserker Shield, if you want to be cheeky, Quinn size. Those two items are going to be really beneficial on him. Then you want to start building stuff like where is it? Shifter Shield, since they brought it into this game. Maybe you want to be building Shogun's Kusari for the magical protections with a little bit of attack speed. I could argue that maybe even Shield of the Phoenix to give you a little bit of cooldown will really help him. Possibly a prophetic cloak. Things that'll kind of just boost his tankiness passively. Those will be really great. Unfortunately, no Predwin this game. Predwin's to me can be good, but not good as it was in the last game. As far as starters go, that's really up to you if you really want to focus down more on the attack speed aspect of him. You can go Death's Toll, Warrior's Axe. If you want to focus more on the ability side, Bluestone, hell, Sands of Time, Conduit Gem, these things will help a lot. I can see Conduit Gem on his 3 doing insane amounts of damage if you manage to level it and just keep and constantly being able to hit that 3. But Bluestone is probably a really good, probably one of his better starters, especially with the other upgrade, basically making them take their health as physical damage, and that paired with the 3 is going to be very scary for tanks or even some DPSs. But I think in most cases you're probably going to be building Warrior's Axe or Death's Toll. Other than that, I don't think, even though he does have intelligence scaling, so building stuff that gives him some kind of intelligence scaling would kind of help, but I don't think it's really worth it, to be honest. Maybe a Chronos Pendant if you're feeling cheeky. Divine Ruin, again, with the tick on his 3, you're basically going to be anti-healed forever. I also do think maybe Bronchi's Harp could be a potential game changer for him, since it does give him intelligence and strength, so it can actually help his 3 and part of his big boy ult do more damage, and then your autos will also do magical damage. So I think there could be some arguments for some of these cards, but I don't think a lot of these are going to be worth it. More than likely, you're probably going to be sticking with strength. Again, some notable cards that you could possibly build on him. Maybe Hydra's for auto canceling, which would be really good. I would say the Executioner, Titan's Bane, make his abilities hit harder. Hasten Fatalis is also really good. You know, since they don't have Frostbound in the game, having this on could also help. Plus, it gives 5% penetration with 20% attack speed, so this could be your one attack speed card. But again, you kind of want to have a hybrid of both. I think having a lot of cards that help with his ability, so maybe like a Gladiator if you want to focus more on the ability side. Glad Shield, Crusher, Serrated Edge, all these are really good on him. I'll probably be posting a more definite video for his builds, but I think that will probably be a good starting point for everybody who wants to kind of just take him into solo lane, or just take him into like an arena match and just kind of have fun with them and play around. But if you liked the video, or if you discovered anything with this character that you wanted to let everybody know, please leave a comment. And I appreciate everybody's time, and y'all have a nice rest of your night.